Highness Excellency Sheikh Tamim Al Thani, as well as the Qatari people, the President of the Republic of France, yesterday extended to the Emir of Qatar our full support. These strikes represent a grave violation of international law. Let us recall that the use of force throughout and at all times is strictly regulated by the Charter of the United Nations. These strikes generate a grave risk to regional stability, which has already been imperiled by an alarming escalation of tensions in Lebanon, in Syria, and the entire region. It is in the interest of all parties, including Israel, to avoid a new cycle of violence with devastating consequences for the entire region. Therefore, we call upon all parties to exercise utmost restraint. These strikes, lastly, targeted the very area where critical talks are being held for peace in Gaza and targeted those who were conducting the talks to achieve a ceasefire and the release of all hostages who are still being held by Hamas in Gaza. This needs to remain our paramount priority. Once again, France reiterates our unequivocal condemnation of the heinous crimes of Hamas, a terrorist movement, and the linchpin, and we call upon the movement to release the hostages and to renounce violence. The permanent state of war in Gaza cannot continue. France calls upon all parties to remain engaged in good faith to return in good faith negotiations to end this war in Gaza. To that end, we welcome the tireless efforts of Qatar, which alongside Egypt and the United States has been engaged in critical mediation efforts, and we are very much grateful to Qatar, a key mediator, and we call upon them to continue mediation to that end. Mr. President, there is an alternative to the cycle of violence. That is a political solution rooted in a two-state solution. This is the only way to achieve a lasting peace and security for the Israelis and for the Palestinians, as well as for the entire region. This solution hinges on the recognition of a sovereign Palestinian state with renewed and reformed governance. This solution hinges on the disarmament of Hamas, its exclusion for the future governance of Hamas, governance of Gaza, and the deployment of an international stabilization mission in the Strip. And the solution hinges on Israel's regional integration and the ultimate establishment and construction of a robust security architecture for the entire region. We will remain mobilized to achieve a two-state solution, as was the case during the conference in New York, co-chaired by Saudi Arabia in July. The New York Declaration, the outcome of the work of the conference, sets out a unique roadmap to make the two-state solution a reality. This conference, which will undertake its next step on the 22nd of September during the high-level week of the General Assembly, generates unprecedented political momentum for peace and security for all in the region. This is a path towards peace. Thank you.
I thank the representative of France for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of China.
Thank you, President. I thank Algeria, Pakistan, and Somalia for their initiative in organizing this meeting, and I welcome the presence of His Excellency Mohammed, Prime Minister and Minister for Foreign Affairs of Qatar, and His Excellency Safadi, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Foreign Affairs of Jordan, His Excellency Mr. Gargash, Diplomatic Advisor to the President of the UAE, and thank USG De Carlo for her briefing. On September the 9th, Israel launched an attack on Doha, the capital of Qatar, in flagrant violation of Qatar's territorial sovereignty and national security, international law, and the UN Charter, and efforts to achieve peace. China resolutely opposes this and strongly condemns such an act. It is well known that Qatar, as an important mediator in the ceasefire negotiations, has made great efforts to promote the ceasefire and restore peace in Gaza, which has been highly appreciated by the international community. We note that on September 7th, the U.S. put forward a new ceasefire proposal and claimed that Israel had agreed to it. However, just 2 days later, a Hamas delegation which was discussing the ceasefire proposal was attacked by Israel. Such an act of bad faith irresponsibility, and the deliberate sabotage of the negotiations is indeed despicable. China is deeply concerned that the attack could lead to further escalation of tensions in the region. We must point out that this incident is closely related to the long-standing differing positions of some non-regional countries regarding the Middle East issue. We would like to advise these major countries, in the interest of regional peace and stability, to take a fair and responsible stance to play a constructive role along with the international community in promoting a ceasefire and cessation of hostilities and in easing tensions in the region. I would like to reiterate that military means and the indiscriminate use of force are not the way out of this problem, and that an immediate ceasefire is the right way to save lives and bring the hostages home. China strongly calls on all parties concerned, in particular Israel, to work harder to ease the fighting and resume negotiations, rather than the opposite. Israel must immediately cease all military operations in Gaza, fulfill its obligations under international humanitarian law as an occupying power, fully restore humanitarian access, and support the relief operations of the UN and other humanitarian agencies. President, the Gaza conflict has been going on for almost 2 years, resulting in a humanitarian catastrophe that is appalling and unprecedented in nature. During this period, we have witnessed over and over again the violation of international law and the undermining of the basic norms of international relations. The world cannot return to the law of the jungle, and the Middle East cannot remain in a state of perpetual war. As the primary organ for the maintenance of international peace and security, the Security Council has the responsibility to safeguard international order and the rule of law, and to promote regional peace and stability. The Council is now discussing a draft resolution on the humanitarian issue of Gaza. China supports Council's immediate action to end the fighting in Gaza and to ease the humanitarian catastrophe, and calls on the Council members and the international community to make joint efforts to this end. Thank you, President.
I thank the representative of China for the statement. I shall now make a statement in my capacity as representative of the Republic of Korea. I also thank ESG Rosemary DiCarlo for her briefing. It is deeply troubling that another unacceptable incident happened amid the ongoing instability and tensions in the region. The Security Council's press statement released today clearly exemplifies the collective voice of the international community. The Israeli attacks targeting Qatari soil on Tuesday represent yet another grave violation of international law. One of the core principles under the UN Charter is clear: sovereignty and territorial integrity must be respected in international relations. The Republic of Korea is appalled that the attacks allegedly targeting Hamas leadership, yet also killing a member of the Qatar Internal Security Forces, happened in the residential area of Doha, the capital of the key mediating country, Qatar. Therefore, the Republic of Korea calls for the full respect of sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political independence of every country, as well as immediate de-escalation in the region. International law can't be selective. It must be strictly observed by all states. More regional instability helps no one in the region at this vital juncture. Also unacceptable is that these attacks are hampering ongoing negotiations to secure an immediate ceasefire and release of all hostages brutally held by Hamas. and the attacks were committed just a few days after a new ceasefire proposal has been put forward. Hamas committed atrocious terrorist attacks against Israeli civilians, which we continue to condemn in the strongest terms. However, Tuesday's Doha attacks directly targeting its negotiation team does not help advance the talks, which stand at an inflection point. We reaffirm our full support for the efforts by the US, Qatar, and Egypt, and the unwavering commitment of Qatar for its diplomatic mediation undertakings, as reflected in the recent remarks by its Prime Minister. The incident was also grievous, as it may have significant negative impact on common efforts by the international community to ease the extreme humanitarian suffering of Palestinian civilians, as well as Israeli hostages held in Gaza. The international community, including members of this Council, are seeking measures, either multilaterally or bilaterally, to expand the desperately needed humanitarian aid to those civilians in Gaza. It is lamentable that the government of Israel chose to pursue another act of hostility, rather than actively participating as a direct party to conflict in global humanitarian efforts to halt the famine. Colleagues, we all know the best solution to restore stability in the region: an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the release of all remaining 48 hostages, as well as an urgent surge of humanitarian aid in Gaza, are all crucial for underpinning peace and stability in the region. Upon yet another dangerous escalation in the region, we now hear once again the desperate voice of the long-suffering hostage families pleading for the finalization of the deal. We must listen. The war in Gaza must end now. All hostages must be released. Civilians must be protected, and international law must be respected under any circumstances. We must chart a new path toward regional de-escalation and peace. I shall now make a statement. I resume my function as President of the Council. I now give the floor to His Excellency Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Asim Al Thani, Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs of the State of Qatar.
In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, may the peace, blessings, and mercy of God be upon you. Mr. President, allow me to congratulate you on assuming the presidency of the Council this month. We thank you for quickly responding to our request to convene this meeting. We especially like to thank Algeria, Pakistan, Somalia, the UK, and France that asked for holding this meeting on our behalf. We also thank Ms. Rosemary DiCarlo, Undersecretary General for Political and Peacebuilding Affairs, for her briefing. We thank the Council members for adopting the press release today. We appreciate your solidarity with Qatar that we heard in your statements after the unjust Israeli attack on Doha that the press statement has condemned. The attack occurred on the soil of a main mediator. The statement stressed the commitment to the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Qatar in line with the principles of the United Nations. We address the Security Council today in light of a dangerous escalation which constitutes a threat to international peace and security and regional peace and security. This is why it is at the core of the mandate of the Security Council as per the Charter. The Israeli attack, an unjust attack, at 3:45 on Tuesday, the 9th of September 2025, targeted a residential area allocated by the state to the negotiating teams. This is part of our ongoing negotiation efforts. These residencies house the negotiating team of Hamas and their families. The residential areas are known to all. all those who are engaged in negotiations, even diplomats and journalists that have held meetings with the negotiating team knows where these redundancies are. We take measures to verify what happened, and it turns out that the casualties included Arif Bado, Saad Mohammed Ad-Dosi, who was 22 years old. He was martyred on duty. A number of civilians were also injured, and members of internal security forces working in the compound, they're receiving now medical treatment. We are trying to identify the identity of those affected. It was a residential area, and the attacks terrorized those who lived there. This area houses schools and houses different diplomatic residencies. The attack is a violation of the sovereignty of a state member of the United Nations. This attack is far away of the civilized behavior by states that believe in peace. Qatar is making tireless efforts to save lives, and this attack puts the international community before a test. Israel, led by extremists, bloodthirsty extremists, have gone beyond any borders, any limitations when it comes to behavior, not only among states, but among individuals. We're unable to predict what Israel can do. How can we host Israeli representatives when they have commit this attack? Have you heard of any state that is attacking a mediator this way? A state that is attacking negotiating teams that are hosted by Qatar, and then the Prime Minister is using shameful justifications and is trying to justify this attack that is condemned by the whole world. The Prime Minister should have recall the model of Taliban. They had a political bureau in Doha, and we had a negotiation channel or a communication channel, and this channel led to reaching an agreement on Afghanistan that led to the end of the war after decades. The U.S. have never targeted the negotiators over these years. On the contrary, the world has seen the success of these efforts in cooperation with the United States under the leadership of Donald Trump to end the longest war in the history of the United States in 2020. This is the approach we pursue. This is the approach that the Prime Minister of Israel is trying to distort. These continued violations of international law, this behavior that undermine all values, prove only one thing, that the current leaders of Israel are arrogant, and they believe that they enjoy impunity. In addition to the genocide in Gaza and the unprecedented humanitarian disaster in the Strip, and the international community has not acted yet, here we are. We can see that Israel is undermining the stability of the region impetuously. Israel is trying to rearrange the region by force. It is using fundamentalist ideas. That is the basis of Israel's behaviors. Israel leaders are declaring that. And they think that only the Israeli population is listening to them, but we're all listening to them. The peoples of the region are not accepting this kind of behavior, are not accepting this narrative. We believe fully in mediation and the peaceful settlement of disputes, and Qatar's role is being appreciated worldwide. Our efforts has proven that our efforts in cooperation with the United States and Egypt has led tangible results. It led to the release of 148 hostages. It has led to providing humanitarian aid to Gaza. It was a glimmer of hope, a rare glimmer of hope in this Gaza. But attacking our territories while we were busy with negotiations has uncovered the intention of Israel. It is trying to undermine any prospect of peace. It is trying to perpetuate the the suffering of the Palestinian people. The Palestinian people is subjected to unimaginable suffering. It also shows that extremists that rule Israel today do not care about the hostages. This is not a priority. Otherwise, how would we justify the timing of this attack? Because the negotiations were looking at the latest U.S. proposal. The negotiating team of Hamas have been getting together to discuss the U.S. proposal, and the attack occurred. Mr. President, I stand before you today, and I urge your august council to bear its historic responsibility. Silence before the law of the jungle and targeting a sovereign country this way undermines international efforts, undermines the prospects of any peace process in our region. The continuation of such attacks does not only target Qatar, it is a clear threat to target any country that is working on achieving peace, and that undermines the trust in the United Nations. The state of Qatar stresses, under the leadership of its emir, may God protect him, that we will continue our humanitarian and diplomatic role without any hesitation in order to stop the bloodshed. At the same time, we will not condone any attack on our sovereignty. We will reserve the right to respond through tools guaranteed by international law. We call for peace, not war. Peace is our approach, and we will not be deterred by those who call for war and destruction. Before your Security Council, we present these facts, and we recall that today we're discussing an attack on all diplomatic efforts to reach peaceful solution. The only way to peace goes through negotiations, and it starts with a ceasefire and the release of all detainees and hostages, and ensuring the unconditional entry of humanitarian aid, and lifting the blockade. Allow me, on behalf of all peace-loving peoples around the world, I would like to be optimistic. We cannot succumb to extremists. We have to continue to pursue peace through the two-state solutions, through the establishment of the independent Palestinian state, fully sovereign on Palestinian national soil, according to international resolutions. We need two states, two peoples living side by side in peace. This will only be achieved through the adherence of the principles of international law. I thank you.
I thank His Excellency Sheikh Al Thani for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Israel.
Mr. President, on September 9th, Israel carried out a precise and targeted strike in Doha. The strike targeted Hamas leaders who for years have planned and directed attacks against Israel, many times making these directives from the luxury confines in Doha. These terrorists were the sole target of the operation. The men targeted were not legitimate politicians, diplomats, or representatives. They were the masterminds of terror. They orchestrated the massacre on October 7th, murdering civilians, kidnapping children, raping women, wiping out entire communities. As the smoke still rose from the massacre, even as the attack was still unfolding, Hamas leaders in Qatar appeared live on television, proudly broadcasting their celebration. While Israelis hid in safe rooms, fled from gunfire, and endured murder, kidnapping, and rape, Hamas's leaders feasted and congratulated themselves in real time. These are the same men who called for jihad to escalate the conflict. They called for blood, not peace. They wild terror, not negotiation. And the terror has not stopped. Just days ago, at Ramot Junction in Jerusalem, Hamas terrorists opened fire on a bus stop crowded with children and adults. 6 innocent people were murdered, among them a 25-year-old who had immigrated from Spain, recently married and building his future in Israel, a rabbi who had dedicated his life to teaching the next generation. 2 residents of the community struck down in their own neighborhood. Among the wounded was a woman 8 months pregnant, left to fight for her life and the life of her unborn child. These are not numbers. They are lives, families, futures stolen. When the gunfire stopped, the bus and the pavement around it were drenched in blood. This is what terrorism looks like. Mothers clutching babies, a bus stop turned into a battlefield, a community scared in seconds. This is a reality we face in Israel. Terror raising its ugly head almost every single day. And let this council be reminded, there can be no immunity for terrorists. Hamas immediately praised the killers as heroic and exceptional, later claiming full responsibility for the attack and calling the massacre of innocent people a natural response. There is nothing natural about this. It is terror, pure and simple. Today, 48 innocent people are still held hostage by Hamas. Their families live in daily pain. It has been more than 700 days that innocent people have been trapped in Hamas captivity. 700 days of cruelty and abuse. Hamas has used them as bargaining chips, turning their suffering into currency. But let me be clear, there is no immunity for terrorists. Not for those who commit it, and not for those who enable it. Israel has agreed to President Trump's ceasefire proposal. We are ready to stop the fighting, but Hamas refuses. They keep the world waiting. They are in no rush. They have the time. Indifferent to the human suffering that their delay causes. And who suffers from this refusal? Not the leaders of Hamas, living abroad in the Ritz-Carlton in Doha. They don't suffer, they have the time. But the hostages languishing in their cells and the people of Gaza used as human shields. From the start, Hamas's strategy has been to embed its weapons among civilians. They hide rockets in schools, command centers in hospitals, and tunnels under homes. They put their own people in harm's way, then cry crocodile tears when civilians are hurt. Our fight is with Hamas, not with the people of Gaza, not with the state of Qatar. Israel will continue to take precautions to protect innocent lives. That is the difference between us and those who glorify massacre and terror. Like in the Bible, like Cain in the Bible, who was marked for the murder of his brother, so too are Hamas's leaders marked for their crimes. It doesn't matter where they hide, whether in the tunnel in Gaza or in a luxury hotel abroad. The mark of Cain is upon them. For too long, Hamas leaders have been sheltered not only in Doha, but in Beirut, Tehran, and elsewhere, parading as politicians and statesmen while acting as terrorists. They are treated like celebrities, when in reality, they are commanders of massacre and barbarism. This false disguise of legitimacy gave them freedom to move, to buy weapons, to recruit through so-called humanitarian networks, and to spread propaganda on international platforms that should have rejected them. This strike sends a message that should echo across this chamber. There is no sanctuary for terrorists, not in Gaza, not in Tehran, not in Doha. There is no immunity for terrorists. And yet, here in this council, some members chose to give Hamas legitimacy, even protection. Israel will not. we will act against the leaders of terror wherever they are hiding. Mr. President, we have heard today in this Council allegations about a breach of the territorial sovereignty of Qatar. But one must ask, where were these concerns when sovereignty was violated by terror itself? On October 8, when Hezbollah launched rockets across Israel's border, when Houthis fired a ballistic missile at Ben Gurion airport, or just days ago, when a Houthi drone crashed into the arrivals hall of Rabon airport, injuring civilians. How can anyone hide behind allegations appealing to the principles of international law while giving legitimacy to those who openly glorify October 7th and continue to plot terror? Mr. President, this brings me to Qatar. Prime Minister Al-Thani, the time for Qatar to choose has come. For too long, Qatar has harbored terrorists, offering Hamas leaders sanctuary in luxury hotels while they orchestrate massacres and terror attacks. History will not be kind to accomplices. Either Qatar condemns Hamas, expels Hamas, and brings Hamas to justice, or Israel will. Mr. President, the world has faced moments like this before. Today, the world remembers the devastating terrorist attacks of September 11th. That tragic day, like October 7th for Israel, was a day of fire and blood. In the aftermath of 9/11, the countries that uphold freedom, equality, and democracy in this Council stood shoulder to shoulder. 2 weeks later, this Council adopted Resolution 1373. It said plainly, no state may harbor terrorists. No state may fund them. No state may give them safe haven. I urge you all to read this resolution. Any government that does so breaks this Council-binding obligations. That principle was clear then. It must be upheld today. And when bin Laden was eliminated in Pakistan, the question asked was not, why target a terrorist on foreign soil? No one asked that question. The question was, why was a terrorist given shelter at all? The same question must be asked today. There was no immunity for bin Laden, and there can be no immunity for Hamas. And in facing terror, history shows that members of this Council have done the very same. From 2014 to 2022, France struck terrorists in Mali, Chad, Burkina Faso, and Mauritania. In 2014 and 2015, the United Kingdom carried out airstrikes in Iraq and Syria against ISIS. So I ask, if these actions were justified then, why is Israel singled out now? Why are claims concerning sovereignty invoked only against Israel and ignored when others act to defend themselves? Is Israeli blood worth less? The question to ask is not why Israel targets the mastermind of terror, but why they are sheltered abroad, while hostages starve in captivity and Gazans are left to suffer. Israel's fight is not only Israel's. It is a fight of all who believe in democracy against those who worship death and violence, light against darkness, civilization against barbarism, justice against terror. We will continue until the hostages are free, until our people are safe, and until terror can no longer find sanctuary in any corner of the world, because there is no, and there never will be, immunity for terrorists. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Israel for the statement. I now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Ayman Safadi, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Foreign Affairs in the Inspectorate of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan.
In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, Mr. President, I congratulate you on assuming the presidency of the Council, and I thank Undersecretary General De Carlo for her briefing. Esteemed colleagues, a rogue government soaked in the blood of innocent people, imbued with extremism and hatred, does not care about international law, is not deterred by human values, considers itself above the law, uses brutality to impose a racist ideology, and to achieve expansionist goals that threatens peace and security in the region and the world. This is the reality of the Israeli government. The international community must act immediately and effectively to curb its arrogance and to protect the whole region from its disastrous actions. Over the past 23 months, Israel has killed more than 65,000 Palestinians in Gaza. It claimed the lives of 540 humanitarian workers and 247 journalists. It has used starvation as a weapon. The famine that it created in Gaza killed 411 Palestinians, including 142 children. Israel turned Gaza into a land where any sign of life is obliterated, any human values are obliterated. Killing has become promotional material for occupation soldiers. Killing more than 100 Palestinians daily has become an ordinary occurrence. This government is using any and all means to increase escalation, to increase violence, to deepen the conflict, and to push towards chaos. It continues to commit genocide in Gaza. More than 1 million Palestinians in Gaza City are faced with the threat of being killed or dying of starvation or being forcibly displaced to camps where Israel has destroyed the lives of those who are forced to go to those camps in wastelands, lacking all basic necessities of life. And Israel is preventing the delivery of humanitarian and medical aid to these camps. It prevents the delivery of baby formula, bread, and water. Israel is expanding its illegal settlements in the occupied West Bank. It is protecting terrorist settlers that are launching 4 terrorist attacks daily on Palestinians. It is seizing more Palestinian land. It is imposing a blockade on the Palestinian people and its legitimate leadership economically, and it's imposing a blockade on their lives. It is thereby killing all prospects of achieving just and durable peace. Today, just hours before this meeting, the Prime Minister of Israel says that he allowed for building new illegitimate settlements in the occupied Palestinian territories. He boasted about preventing the establishment of a Palestinian state. He boasted about killing all prospect of peace and subjecting the peoples of the region, including the Israeli people, to more conflict and more wars. Israel is attacking the stability of Lebanon. It is occupying more Syrian territories. It is contriving sectarian strife to plunge Syria into chaos and conflict, in another flagrant violation of international law, in another dangerous escalation. Israel is violating the sovereignty of the brotherly state of Qatar. It is launching a cowardly attack against its capital, Qatar. It is shamelessly betraying a state that has been working tirelessly in partnership with the Arab Republic of Egypt and the United States of America to reach an exchange deal, to reach a permanent ceasefire, to end the suffering, and to allow for returning to diplomacy to achieve peace and security for all. We condemn this brutal and treacherous attack against Qatar. As King Ibn al-Hussein and the Crown Prince to the Emir of Qatar, Qatar stands unequivocally with Qatar in any steps it takes to protect the security, sovereignty, and safety of its citizens. Our security is Qatar's security. The stability of Qatar is the stability of the region. We are united by one vision. And the choice of Qatar is our choice, and it's a clear choice. Our choice and our vision is a secure and stable Middle East, where just, durable, and comprehensive peace prevails. A Middle East that realizes the right of the Palestinian people to life, freedom, and statehood. A Middle East that that guarantees the security of the Israelis and the Palestinians and all peoples of the region. A Middle East where cooperation replaces conflict and hope replaces despair. The Israeli government and its extremists are lying when they're trying to justify their betrayal of Qatar after all the efforts it has been making to reach an exchange deal and to end the war. They're lying when they claim that they're surrounded by those who wish to destroy them. All Arab countries are committed to achieving just and durable peace that ensures the security of Israel, ensures that it has normal relations with the countries of the region in the context of implementing the two-state solution that ends the occupation and that establishes an independent, sovereign Palestinian state on national Palestinian soil along the lines of the 4th of June 1967, in line with international resolutions, living in peace and security side by side with Israel. Israel has yet to engage positively with the Arab Peace Initiative of 2002, the declaration of the Conference on the Two-State Solutions that was organized by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the French Republic last July, which was attended by 125 states, confirmed unequivocally that we choose the just peace. The meeting that will be held here in the United Nations as a follow-up to this conference offers an opportunity to all states to support peace efforts by recognizing the Palestinian state and by supporting the two-state solution as the only way to achieve peace. We want just peace. But the reality is that there is no Israeli partner now to work with to achieve said peace. Esteemed colleagues, your august Council holds the responsibility of protecting peace and security, and it has the tools. Use those tools, apply international law and the Charter of the United Nations, which form the basis of your legitimacy. Use those tools to ensure the acceptance of the exchange deal that Qatar, Egypt, and the United States have been working on. Use these tools to stop the aggression on Gaza, to end the starvation, to enforce the entry of humanitarian aid, to protect what is left of the credibility of international law and international humanitarian law, to restore the belief that human values and international law exist to be applied without discrimination, without selectivity, to reaffirm that no aggressor should be granted immunity and that there is no state above the law, to revive the hope that conflict is not the fate of the region and that peace is possible and it's our common goal and we can achieve this goal if the necessary will is demonstrated. Ladies and gentlemen, the message that Israel has sent through its attack on Qatar is that it will persist with its aggression. It will persist with violating the sovereignty of states. It will persist with violating international law. It will persist with killing civilians and innocent people. It will persist in imposing a famine on Gaza. It will persist in preventing 6,000 students in Gaza from the right to education because it is enjoying immunity. It is evading accountability for all these crimes. Esteemed colleagues, injustice has reached unconscionable levels. Stop it. Stop this injustice before it's too late. Thank you, and may the peace, mercy, and blessings of God be upon you.
I thank His Excellency Mr. Safadi for the statement. I now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Anwar Gargash, Diplomatic Advisor to the President of the United Arab Emirates.
Mr. President, I would like to begin by thanking the Republic of Korea for promptly convening this emergency session. I'd also like to thank Ms. Rosemary DiCarlo for her comprehensive briefing. The United Arab Emirates endorses the statement that Kuwait will deliver on behalf of the Gulf Cooperation Council, along with statements from the Arab and OIC groups. The high-level participation in this session clearly underscores the gravity with which we view this Israeli aggression against the state of Qatar. Mr. President, the UAE has condemned in the strongest terms the blatant Israeli attack against the state of Qatar, which represents a flagrant violation of Qatar's sovereignty and the Gulf state's security. It is a serious assault on international law, including the UN Charter, and it is an irresponsible escalation that threatens regional stability and international peace and security. Yesterday, the President of the UAE, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, visited Doha. He reaffirmed our complete solidarity with Qatar, its leadership and people, and our firm support for all measures that Qatar takes to protect its sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the safety of its people. Mr. President, the Security Council's continued failure to act decisively against repeated Israeli violations of fundamental principles of the UN Charter will undoubtedly have severe consequences for regional and international peace. This unprecedented attack against Qatar also seriously undermines prospects for peace and ending the war in Gaza. Qatar, together with Egypt and the United States, has played a leading role in efforts to secure a ceasefire, to release the hostages and detainees and return them to their loved ones, and to resume unhindered humanitarian aid at scale. These reckless, belligerent actions will deliver neither Israel nor the region our shared goal for peace, prosperity, security, and stability. They only serve to fuel more violence, extremism, and chaos, precisely when the region desperately needs restraint and de-escalation. Furthermore, the relentless threats of land annexation and attacks on neighboring countries destroys any foundation for lasting peace and threatens the entire region's stability. Mr. President, we must work together toward a better future for the people of our region, one built in justice, coexistence, shared prosperity, and good neighborly relations, free from extremist ideologies of any kind. As we all strive for a just and lasting peace in the region, the attacks on the state of Qatar further inflames an already explosive situation. And with our gathering today, we reaffirm the centrality of international law and the sovereignty of states, as well as the wisdom required of all of us to achieve peace and security. Today, Mr. President, Qatar does not stand alone. The Council spoke with one voice to condemn aggression. Our collective voice should make a difference against these unlawful acts of transgression against international law. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank His Excellency Mr. Gargash for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Turkey.
Mr. President, I have the honor to deliver the following statement on behalf of the member states of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation in my capacity as chair of the group. Mr. President, let me express our appreciation to you for prompt convening of this meeting following the Israeli attack, which targeted the residential headquarters of members of the political bureau of Hamas in Doha, State of Qatar, on Tuesday, 9 September, resulting in death of several persons, including a Qatari or more Qatari citizens, while leaving many others injured in the residential area. The OIC group condemns in its strongest terms this despicable and unwarranted attack against the State of Qatar in flagrant violation of its territorial sovereignty and national security. There is no doubt that this dastardly action constitutes a blatant violation of the norms of international law and certainly the Charter of the United Nations, much as it represents an overt threat to both the security of the Middle East region and indeed international peace and security. Indeed, this attack represents state terrorism and is part of a pattern of systematic policies and ongoing efforts by Israel to destabilize the region. We express our full solidarity with the State of Qatar during this critical period, while we stand united in support of the right and duty of the State of Qatar to respond decisively to any reckless breach or aggression that threatens its security and jeopardizes regional stability. We also support Qatar as it takes necessary measures to protect its citizens and defend its sovereignty and territorial integrity, including political, diplomatic, and legal measures. We commend the tireless and sincere efforts made by the State of Qatar under the leadership of His Highness Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, Emir of the State of Qatar, in the areas of mediation, de-escalation, and peaceful resolution of disputes in the region and beyond. These efforts are crucial to maintaining international peace and security in accordance with the Charter of the UN. We appreciate the commitment of the State of Qatar to continue its steadfast and constructive approach of standing with its brothers and friends and in advocating for just humanitarian causes, thereby strengthening the foundations of international peace and security. In this regard, OIC Group calls on the United Nations Security Council to take firm measures in the face of this unjustified use of armed force against the sovereignty of Qatar, an act that constitutes an obvious threat to international peace and security. Accordingly, we call on the Council to hold Israel accountable for this act of aggression. OIC Group recognizes that this latest act of aggression against a peace-loving, mediating state in our region is yet another example of the impunity which has continued to characterize Israel's relations with the countries in the Middle East. It has become obvious that the absence of any deterrent measure by the United Nations, and especially this Council, has continued to embolden the Israeli authorities in its incessant violation of international law and the charter of this organization. We recall the unwavering position of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation pursuant to its charter, as well as its various summit and ministerial resolutions, which firmly reject any aggression against the sovereignty and security of any of its members. We call on the international community to strongly condemn this illegal attack against Qatar as a way of promoting, supporting, and defending the noble principles of peace and security within the global setting. I thank you again, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Turkey for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Iraq.
سيد رئيس المجلس.
Mr. President, I would like to seize this opportunity to congratulate you on assuming the presidency of the Security Council this month. We also thank and express our gratitude to the Republic of Panama for assuming the presidency of the Security Council last month. We also express our deep appreciation for the efforts to convene this emergency session. Mr. President, the Middle East region is currently on a dangerous slope as a result of the reckless ongoing actions of the Israeli entity. And at a time when voices are rising, demands are growing for calm and de-escalation, for intensifying diplomatic efforts, and for ending the ongoing bombardment of the occupied Gaza Strip and the series of crimes committed there. Amidst all of this, the Israeli entity is once again deliberately trying to drag the region and the world onto a dangerous path by committing a blatant attack on Tuesday, September the 9th, 2025, targeting residential buildings where a number of members of Hamas political bureau reside in the Qatari capital, Doha. This attack resulted in the death of a number of people, including a Qatari citizen, in addition to a number of injuries. The attack took place in a residential area that includes also a school and houses. We reiterate that this attack constitutes a flagrant violation of all international laws and norms. It is a serious threat to the security and safety of citizens and residents of the state of Qatar. These repeated attacks by the Israeli entity are nothing but acts of aggression against the entire region and a flagrant threat to international peace and security. As such, we call upon the international community to shoulder its legal and moral obligations in the face of these attacks. We stress the need for firm and strict international positions, especially in the Security Council. This attack represents state terrorism and comes in the context of systematic policies and continuous attempts by the Israeli entity to destabilize security and stability in the region. It requires a policy of zero tolerance for such reckless behavior, this constant tampering with the security of the region, or the targeting of the security and sovereignty of states. Mr. President, the Arab group condemns in the strongest terms the Israeli attack on the Qatari capital, Doha, and the threat to the safety and security of its citizens, as well as the violation of the safety and sovereignty and territorial integrity of the Qatari state. We support the state of Qatar within the framework of its right and duty to act decisively against any reckless violation or aggression that undermines its security and threatens the stability of the region. We support Qatar in preserving its right to respond to this blatant attack and to take all necessary political, diplomatic and legal measures to protect its people and defend its sovereignty and territorial integrity, including, as we said, political, diplomatic and legal measures. We commend the tireless and sincere efforts undertaken by the state of Qatar in the framework of mediation, de-escalation and the peaceful resolution of disputes in the region within the framework of maintenance of international peace and security in accordance with the UN Charter. We value Qatar's affirmation that it will continue this constructive approach, standing with brothers and friends and supporting the just human causes in a manner that would safeguard and bolster international peace and security. The current phase also requires the redoubling of our efforts, and that our top priority should be to stop the targeting of civilians and save the regions from the evils of war. Mr. President, the foundations of protecting regional and international security, which are your responsibility, require us to stand today to stop these attacks immediately, to hold accountable those who threaten our security and stability, to hold the Israeli entity legally and politically responsible for these irrational and reckless acts and take all measures to stop these violations and ensure their non-recurrence. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Iraq for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Kuwait.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
In the name of God the Merciful, Mr. President, I have the honor of issuing this statement on behalf of the members of the Gulf Cooperation Council, namely UAE, the Kingdom of Bahrain, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the Sultanate of Oman, the State of Qatar, and my country, the State of Kuwait. We congratulate you on acceding to the presidency of the Council this month. And we wish to convey to you our gratitude to Panama for the presidency of the Council last month. We also thank Ms. DiCarlo for her briefing. Mr. President, today we are making this joint statement in order to reaffirm our unwavering solidarity of the Gulf with the brotherly nation of Qatar. We categorically reject any and all violations of its sovereignty, security, and its stability. We recall our collective position, which has remained unchanged, namely that the full responsibility for these heinous acts and their consequences falls on Israel's shoulders squarely. We will not tolerate any attack on the security of our countries or on the stability of our region. Mr. President, we condemn in the strongest possible terms Israel's criminal, cowardly and flagrant attack on Tuesday the 9th of September of this year. That act of aggression constitutes a dangerous and direct escalation against a sovereign Arab state. It was an attack which targeted residential complexes that housed a number of members of the Hamas political bureau in Doha, Qatar. The attack claimed the lives of several people, including a Qatari citizen. Other people were wounded, and the attack occurred in a residential neighborhood which included a school and housing. We convey our condolences to our brothers in Qatar. This aggression is a flagrant violation of international laws and customs. It stands as a grave threat to the peace and security of the Qatari people and the residents of the state of Qatar. We here warn unambiguously regarding the consequences of continuing to violate state sovereignty. National security of states or the countries of the GCC is a red line for us, and similar acts will be met with collective actions, tougher in nature, and legal political measures as deterrence, according to what's agreed upon within international organizations. Mr. President, this aggression occurred as part of systematic policies and continued attempts on Israel's part to undermine regional security and stability. We cannot stand for this irresponsible Israeli behavior, this reckless Israeli behavior which imperils the region's security. We must not tolerate any action which targets our sovereignty and security. This hostile approach will be met with a united stance of the Gulf countries. There will be no compromises made on sovereignty or security. Mr. President, we reiterate that the state of Qatar has the right and duty to deal with any aggressions or violations which undermine or threaten stability in the region. It can do so in the strongest terms. Qatar has the right to respond to the heinous attack and to take all measures necessary to respond to it in order to protect its people, defend its sovereignty and its territorial integrity. This includes taking diplomatic, political and/or legal measures. We reiterate that this right is enshrined in the United Nations Charter. We recall that dealing resolutely and firmly with this aggression will act as a deterrent to those tempted to undermine the security of a state. This aggression was not only against Qatar, but against the region as a whole. The attack constitutes a flagrant threat to international peace and security. We consequently urge the international community as a whole to shoulder its legal and moral responsibilities in terms of these rogue attacks, and we urge the international community to hold the perpetrators accountable. In this connection, we insist that there is a need to adopt decisive, resolute measures as blocks and as regions. This applies also and particularly to the Security Council. The Council must adopt practical and immediate measures, including clear measures to deter any further acts of aggression, and the Council must lever all accountability tools to ensure that this flagrant aggression against the sovereignty of a state that plays a central role in de-escalation efforts does not occur again. Mr. President, we commend the sincere efforts of the State of Qatar under the leadership of Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, Emir of Qatar. We commend their efforts to mediate, de-escalate and to resolve disputes through peaceful means in the region. They've also done this with a view to protecting international peace and security in accordance with the UN Charter. Attacking a loyal mediator torpedoes the chances of calm. It destabilizes the region and erodes the chance of peace. To conclude, Mr. President, the countries of the GCC will remain resolved to continue all efforts to promote international peace and security. We stand shoulder to shoulder with the State of Qatar, a brotherly state, and we call for this aggression to be referred to specialized international mechanisms. The international community must hold the attackers accountable immediately. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Kuwait for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Egypt.
Mr. President, Your Excellency, Mr. Abdurrahman Al Thani, the Prime Minister of Qatar, Your Excellency, Mr. Ayman Al Safadi, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs of Jordan, Mr. Anwar Gargash, Diplomatic Advisor to the President of the UAE. We gather today to discuss the aggression that was unacceptable against the State of Qatar, that was making tireless efforts alongside with Egypt and the U.S. to achieve ceasefire in Gaza Strip and achieve security and peace for the Palestinian and Israeli peoples alike. Israel's cooperation and appreciation of these efforts was a treacherous aggression on Qatari territory under unacceptable pretexts. Mr. President, Israel committed an aggression against an Arab country that was not the first of its kind and will not be the last since the beginning of the crisis in Gaza. It committed this aggression in light of a genocide committed against the Palestinian people that we must not overlook, and in light of the displacement of the Palestinian people and the occupation of their lands that must end. Unfortunately, Israel will continue this aggression and these crimes as long as the Security Council and the international community do not take serious measures to deter Israel from its policy of extreme aggression and its repeated violation of international law and the Charter of the UN. Mr. President, Egypt would like to highlight the following points. First, Egypt condemns in the strongest terms the blatant aggression against the state of Qatar, which targeted the political bureau of Hamas movement in a flagrant violation of the provisions of international law and the UN Charter. Egypt stresses its full solidarity and its position in support of the brotherly state of Qatar that made strenuous efforts that should be appreciated and praised by all to stop the war in Gaza and to achieve stabilization in the region. Egypt stresses that the international law and the UN Charter guarantee to Qatar and Arab countries that have been subjected to similar Israeli aggressions, it guarantees them all the options to address this aggression, which the Security Council should not stand by in its face. The Israeli aggression clearly reveals the party that is hindering the achievement of a ceasefire agreement, and the party that wishes to prolong the war for extremist political and religious goals aimed at displacing the Palestinian people and attempting to liquidate their cause, as well as for internal reasons that we all know. The aggression targeted Qatar, which is making tremendous efforts with Egypt to reach this agreement, and aimed at a meeting that was scheduled to discuss the latest offer to stop the war and proposals to do that, which of course will further cause difficulties and make it difficult to reach a solution within the negotiations. Third, this brutal attack clearly reflects the ideology of Israeli politics, which knows nothing but the language of killing, destruction and aggression, an ideology that does not distinguish between right and wrong, and is even assaulting those who are helping it. And we wonder, how do mediation efforts succeed? How can they succeed in convincing all parties in the region of the feasibility of a peaceful solution while Israel is attacking the mediators who facilitate this solution, who are the mediators for it? Egypt stresses that the military option and the method of imposing solutions by force have not worked for Israel, as all fronts of the conflict are still burning and tensions prevail due to repeated Israeli aggressions. The wall of hatred is taking root again. In fact, the only breakthrough in this landscape was achieved only at the beginning of the year due to mediation efforts that succeeded in achieving a ceasefire that we had hoped will be sustained had it not been for Israel's desire to prolong the aggression. Fifth, Egypt calls for intensifying efforts to stop the Israeli war against Gaza Strip, which has claimed the lives of more than 64,000 martyrs. We call for saving Gaza Strip from a famine that is killing its population and stop the occupation practices in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. We remind you of that humanitarian catastrophe in Palestinian territories that is exacerbated by Israel's siege and crimes. We call upon the Council to immediately adopt a resolution under Chapter 7 that stops the Israeli aggression against Gaza and supports the efforts of the mediators. We reiterate that the Middle East will not witness or know peace or stability except through a just and comprehensive solution that achieves an independent Palestinian state on the June 4, 1967 borders with its capital East Jerusalem. 6. Egypt underscores its continued adherence to peaceful solution to all crises in the region and its efforts to establish peace and end wars. Perhaps our latest endeavors has been manifested in the success of our efforts to mediate between the state of Iran and the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, and the signing of the Cairo Agreement yesterday to resume technical cooperation in an effort to achieve calm and restore trust between all parties and create an atmosphere that is conducive to regional security and stability. In this context, we stress our firm determination to save the defenseless Palestinian people from the ongoing aggression against their land, especially in the Gaza Strip, and to help in the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip under the full supervision of the Palestinian Authority. In conclusion, Mr. President, we reaffirm our position to stand firmly with our brothers in the state of Qatar and to support any measures Qatar takes in defense of its national security. We call upon the Council to immediately take a decisive decision to deter Israel and stop its war against the Gaza Strip and the countries of the region, and to confront the state terrorism by Israel before Israel sends the region into a regional war that no one can afford. The time has come for the international community to have a unified position that is firm against Israel and oblige Israel to abide by the international law, renounce violence, and embrace peace as a path. Qatar is not alone, Your Excellency Sheikh Mohammed. Egypt and national security are all at the stake, and thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Egypt for the statement. The representative of Pakistan has asked for the floor to make a further statement. I give them the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am obliged to take the floor to respond to some comments. The representative of Israel perhaps did not listen attentively to all council members and other speakers in today's debate. And in our view, it is unacceptable, indeed ludicrous, for an aggressor, an occupier, a serial violator of UN Charter and international law, that is Israel, to abuse this chamber and disrespect the sanctity of this council. And this is not the first time. And by pointing fingers on others, baseless assertions primarily aimed at masking its own illegal actions and violations of international law. President, but that's not at all surprising. It is an occupier that does not listen to anyone, that does not pay heed to any advice, even from its friends, if there are any left, that refutes, and not just refutes, it threatens members of the international community, international media, international human rights and humanitarian organizations, doesn't listen to the ICJ or the ICC, and threatens the UN and its senior officials. And it does that with impunity, shielded by its apologists who time and again acquiesce in its illegal actions and defiance of the international community. And like all occupiers, despite being the aggressor, it feigns and plays the victim. But today it is totally exposed. President, this Council has spent decades discussing the situation in the Middle East and the Palestinian question. Meeting after meeting, we devote hours to this agenda. It is not because of anyone else. It is because of Israel that refuses to vacate its illegal occupation, and that blatantly violates the resolutions of this Council. It's because of that we have these discussions. Israel also chose to refer to an unrelated incident and make misleading remarks regarding Pakistan in an effort to justify its own illegal actions and violations of international law. Pakistan's position on that incident has been clearly stated and is publicly available. The international community is well aware of Pakistan's frontline role and sacrifices in the international community's fight against terrorism. The entire world, including our partners, acknowledge that Al-Qaeda was largely decimated due to Pakistan's counterterrorism efforts. And we remain committed in this global, collective endeavor. We cannot accept insinuations from an irresponsible rogue state that is, in fact, the perpetrator of worst kind of state terrorism that we are witnessing in Gaza and, in fact, in the occupied Palestinian territories for decades. And we reject any false analogy, as has also been done by Qatar. For whatever way it interprets the statements in this council, the occupying power must go back and read carefully the statement issued by the Security Council today. And let me read it out loud here. A statement that normally should have been stronger, but nevertheless it has been unanimously adopted by the Council. The members of the Security Council expressed their condemnation of the recent strikes in Doha, the territory of a key mediator, on 9 September. They expressed deep regret at the loss of civilian life. Council members underscored the importance of de-escalation and expressed their solidarity with Qatar. They underlined their support for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Qatar in line with the principles of the UN Charter. Council members recalled their support for the vital role that Qatar continues to play in mediation efforts in the region and alongside Egypt and the United States. Council members underscored that releasing the hostages, including those killed by Hamas, and ending the war and suffering in Gaza must remain our priority. In this regard, they reiterated the importance of the ongoing diplomatic efforts of Qatar, Egypt, and the United States, and called for the parties to seize the opportunity for peace. That is why we are here this afternoon in this council. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Pakistan for the statement. The representative of Israel has asked the floor to make a further statement. I give them
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, if the distinguished colleague from Pakistan wanted to read the statement, he could have done it at the beginning of the session. But I want to refer to your words. You know, maybe you got offended from the word of my speech, and I apologize for that. But I make sure that in my speech I stick to the facts. And the fact is that Osama bin Laden was killed in Pakistan, and no one condemned the US. And when other countries in this council attack terrorists, no one condemns them. And that is the issue of double standards. When you apply different standards on Israel, then the standard you apply on yourselves, that is the problem of this institution. So yes, you cannot change the fact that 9/11 happened, and today we mark this day. You cannot change the fact that Osama bin Laden was in Pakistan and he was killed on your territory. But I would ask you, when you criticize us, and I'm sure it will continue in the future, think about the issue of double standards, which standards you apply to your country and which standards you apply to Israel. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Israel for the statement. There are no more names inscribed on the list of the speakers. The meeting is adjourned.